Have you ever felt like you work hard, but your money disappears anyway? Have you ever reached the end of the month and quietly asked yourself, where did it all go? You didn't buy anything too expensive. You didn't take any luxury trips. You didn't make any big financial mistakes. And yet, your bank account feels the same. Or worse. Now, here's a harder question. What if the reason you're not getting richer is not because you don't earn enough, but because of small decisions you make every single day? Decisions that feel normal, safe, even smart, but slowly, silently, they are making you poorer. This is not a story about people who waste money. This is a story about people who think they are doing everything right and still lose. Let me tell you about Min. Min is 32 years old. He has a stable job, a decent salary, and a life that looks fine. Every morning, he wakes up early, goes to work, does his job well, and comes home tired. He doesn't gamble. He doesn't spend on luxury brands. He doesn't party. If you ask his friends, they will say, Min is very responsible with money. But Min has a secret he never talks about. At the end of every month, he has almost nothing left. No savings, no investments, no financial growth, just enough to start again next month. One evening, after paying his bills, Min sat quietly in his room. He opened his banking app. He stared at the number. And for the first time, he felt something was wrong. Not panic, not fear, but confusion. How is this possible? He thought. I've been working for years. Why am I still here? That night, Min didn't sleep early. Instead, he did something he had never done before. He looked back, not at his big decisions, but at the small ones, the everyday choices he never questioned. And slowly, a pattern began to appear. A pattern that most people never see. A pattern that might be happening in your life too. The truth is, most people don't become poor because of one big mistake. They become poor because of many small ones. Mistakes that feel harmless. Mistakes that feel normal. Mistake number one begins with something very simple. Something almost everyone believes. Spending a little won't hurt. Min used to think like this. A coffee in the morning. A quick meal outside because he was tired. A small online purchase because it was on sale. Each time, the amount was small. So small that it didn't feel important. But here's what Min didn't realize. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the habit. Because when you repeat something every day, it stops being small. It becomes your lifestyle. Min never tracked these expenses. He never wrote them down. In his mind, they didn't matter. Until one day, he decided to calculate. Not perfectly, just roughly. And what he saw shocked him. That small daily spending was costing him more than a full month of his salary every year. 1 month. Gone. For things he barely remembered. That was the moment Min understood something powerful. Money doesn't disappear in big moments. It disappears quietly, in the background, while you are busy living your life. But that was only the beginning, because mistake number one is not just about spending. It's about awareness. If you don't see where your money goes, you will never understand why it's gone. The next day, Min tried something different. He didn't stop spending. He didn't make any extreme changes. He simply paid attention. Every time he spent money, he paused for a second and asked himself a simple question. Do I really need this? At first, it felt strange, uncomfortable, almost unnecessary. But after a few days, something changed. He began to notice patterns, not just in his spending, but in his emotions. He noticed that he often spent money when he was tired, when he felt stressed, when he didn't want to think. Money, for him, had become a way to escape small discomforts. And that realization changed everything. Because now, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. Control over his habits. Control over his decisions. Control over his future. But here's the deeper truth. Min is not alone. Most people are not bad with money. They are just unconscious. They don't notice. They don't question. They don't pause. And because of that, they slowly build a life that looks stable, but never moves forward. Now let me ask you something. Think about your last 7 days. Not your big expenses, not your rent, not your bills, just the small things, the quick decisions, the it's okay moments. How many times did you spend without thinking? How many times did you tell yourself, it's just a little? And how many times did you forget about it right after? If you're honest, the number might surprise you. And that's where everything begins. Not with saving more, not with earning more, but with seeing clearly. Because you cannot change what you do not see. Min didn't become rich overnight. In fact, nothing dramatic happened in the first week, or the second, but something inside him shifted. He became aware. And awareness is the first step out of every problem. In the next part of this story, you will discover something even more surprising. A mistake that looks responsible, sounds smart, and is often praised by society. But quietly, it keeps people stuck in the same financial position for years. And if you are like most people, you might already be making it without even realizing. The next mistake Min discovered didn't look like a mistake at all. In fact, it looked responsible. It looked safe. It even sounded like something a good adult should do. For years, Min believed one simple idea. As long as I save money, I will be fine. And maybe you believe that too. Saving feels right. It feels disciplined. It feels like progress. Every month, Min tried to put a small amount of money aside. Not much, just enough to feel like he was doing something smart. He didn't invest. He didn't take risks. He didn't try to grow his money. He just saved. Quietly, consistently, and for a long time he felt proud of that. But one evening, something small happened that changed how he saw everything. Min met an old friend. His name was Huang. They hadn't seen each other in years. Back then, they had similar jobs, similar salaries, similar lifestyles. But now, things were different. Very different. Hoang didn't look rich. He wasn't wearing expensive clothes. He wasn't showing off. But there was something about him, a calmness, a quiet confidence. During their conversation, Min asked a simple question. Do you still save money every month? Huang smiled and said something Min didn't expect. I don't focus on saving anymore. Min was confused. What do you mean? Isn't saving important? Hoang nodded slowly. Yes, but saving alone will never make you rich. That sentence stayed in Min's mind, even after they said goodbye. Even after he went home, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Saving alone will never make you rich. At first, it sounded wrong, almost dangerous. Because everything Min had learned growing up told him the opposite. Save money. Avoid risk. Be careful. That's how you stay safe. But suddenly, Min started to question it. The next day, he did something different again. He didn't look at his expenses. He looked at his savings. He calculated how much he had saved over the past few years. And then, he asked himself a hard question. Has this really changed my life? The answer was uncomfortable. No. His savings made him feel secure, but they didn't move him forward. They didn't create new opportunities. They didn't grow. They just stayed there, slowly increasing, but never transforming his situation. And then Min realized something important. Saving protects your money, but it doesn't multiply it. It keeps you safe, but it doesn't help you grow. And if all you do is stay safe, you might stay in the same place forever. That was mistake number 2. Believing that saving alone is enough. But here's the deeper problem. When people focus only on saving, they often become afraid of losing money, afraid of trying new things, afraid of investing, afraid of making mistakes. And that fear quietly limits their future. Min saw this in himself. Every time he thought about investing, he felt uncomfortable. What if I lose money? What if I make the wrong decision? What if it's too risky? So he avoided it, again and again, without realizing that doing nothing was also a decision that kept him exactly where he was. A few days later, Min called Hoang. He wanted to understand more. They met at a small coffee shop. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place to talk. This time, Min didn't try to act like he knew everything. He asked honestly, if saving is not enough, then what should I do? Hoang didn't answer immediately. He took a sip of his coffee and then said something very simple. You need to learn how money works, not how to earn it, not how to save it, but how it grows, how it moves, how it creates more money. Min listened carefully. For the first time, he realized that he had spent years working for money, but almost no time understanding it. Hoang continued. Most people trade time for money. They work and they get paid, and that's where it stops. But people who move forward learn how to make money work for them. That idea felt new, almost uncomfortable, because it required a different way of thinking, not just effort, but understanding, not just discipline, but strategy. Min went home that night with a different mindset. He didn't suddenly start investing. He didn't make any big moves, but he started learning. Slowly, carefully, he read, he watched, he listened, and at first, it was confusing. There were many terms he didn't understand, many ideas that felt complicated. But he didn't stop, because now he had a new question guiding him. Not how can I save more, but how can my money grow? And that question changed everything. Min began to see opportunities where he didn't see them before. He started to understand that money is not just something you keep. It's something you use, something you direct, something you grow. But here's the most important part. Min didn't become rich in a month or even a year. But something inside him shifted again. He moved from fear to curiosity, from protecting money to understanding it. And that shift is where real change begins. Now, let me ask you something. When you think about money, what is your first instinct? To protect it or to grow it? Do you feel more comfortable saving or learning something new that might help you earn more? Do you avoid risk completely? Or do you try to understand it? Because your answers are shaping your future right now, quietly, every day. Min thought he was being smart by saving, and in some ways, he was, but he was only protecting what he had. He wasn't building anything new, and that's the trap many people fall into. They become very good at keeping money, but never learn how to expand it. In the next part of the story, you will discover another mistake, one that feels even more normal, something almost everyone does, something society encourages. And yet, it slowly keeps people tired, busy, and financially stuck for years. And if you're honest, you might already be living it without ever questioning why. There is a mistake that almost everyone makes. It doesn't feel like a mistake. In fact, it feels like the only way to live. It feels normal, expected, even necessary. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Min didn't notice this mistake for years because everyone around him was doing the same thing. Wake up, go to work, come home tired, repeat. Day after day, week after week, year after year. At first, it feels productive. You are busy. You are responsible. You are doing what adults are supposed to do. But one day, something small happened that made Min stop and think. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special. Min came home later than usual. He was tired, not just physically, but mentally. He sat down, looked around his room, and suddenly felt something strange. Not sadness, not stress, but emptiness. A quiet question appeared in his mind. Is this it? He tried to ignore it. He turned on his phone, scrolled for a while, watched a few videos. But the question didn't go away. Is this my life now? Work, eat, sleep, repeat. For the next 20, 30, 40 years? That night, Min didn't feel poor because of money. He felt poor because of time. And that was the beginning of mistake number 3. Trading all your time for money without ever questioning it. At first, this sounds normal because most people are taught one thing. If you want more money, you need to work more hours, more effort, more energy. And Min believed that. For years, he thought the solution to a financial problem was simple. Work harder, stay later, say yes to everything, be the reliable employee. And he did exactly that. His boss trusted him. His colleagues respected him. He was seen as someone who worked hard. But his life didn't really change. Yes, his salary increased slowly over time, but so did his expenses. So did his responsibilities. So did his exhaustion. And without realizing it, Min had built a life where he had very little time left. Time to think, time to learn, time to explore new opportunities, time to grow. Every day was full, but not meaningful. And that's the trap. Being busy can feel like progress, but busy doesn't always mean better. One weekend, Min met Hoang again. This time, they didn't talk about saving. They didn't talk about investing. They talked about time. Min asked something he had never asked before. Do you work as much as before? Hoang smiled and said something that surprised him. I work less than I used to. Min didn't understand. How is that possible? Don't you want to earn more? Hoang leaned back slightly and said, I don't want to trade more time for money. That sentence felt uncomfortable because Min realized that was exactly what he had been doing every year without question. Hoang continued, there are only 24 hours in a day. You can't keep selling all of them because at some point you will have nothing left. Min stayed quiet because deep down he knew it was true. No matter how hard he worked, his time was limited. And if his income depended only on his time, then his growth was also limited. That was a difficult truth to accept because it meant working harder was not the real solution. It might increase income for a while, but it wouldn't create freedom. And suddenly, Min began to see his life differently. He started to notice how much time he was giving away, not just at work, but everywhere. Endless scrolling, mindless habits, activities that didn't add anything to his future. He realized something important. It's not just about how much you work. It's about what you work on. And more importantly, whether your work can grow beyond your time. That idea stayed with him for days, for weeks. Min didn't quit his job. He didn't make any dramatic decisions. But he started asking a new question, a different question. Not, how can I work more? But how can I use my time better? At first, the answer was not clear. But he began with small changes. Instead of spending all his free time resting without purpose, he used a small part of it to learn, just 1 hour a day, not more. But consistent. He explored ideas, skills, opportunities he had ignored before. At first, it felt slow, like nothing was happening. But something was changing inside him. He was no longer just a worker. He was becoming a thinker, a learner, someone who questioned. And that shift was powerful. Because once you start questioning how you use your time, you can never go back to living unconsciously. Min also began to notice something else. Many people around him were tired, busy, stressed, but they never asked why. They accepted it as normal, as the price of being an adult. But Min was no longer comfortable with that idea. He didn't want a life where all his energy was spent just to survive. He wanted something more, not just more money, but more control, more freedom, more meaning. And that's when he has understood the real problem. It wasn't his job. It wasn't his salary. It was the way he was using his time. And more importantly, the way he was thinking about it. If you only see time as something you sell, you will always be limited. But if you start to see time as something you invest, everything changes. Now, let me ask you something. How do you see your time? Is it something you exchange for money? Or something you use to build something bigger? When your day ends, do you feel like you moved forward? Or just finished another cycle? If you continue living the same way for the next 5 years, where will you be? And more importantly, will you be satisfied? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. Because your future is not built in big moments. It is built in how you spend your time every single day. Min didn't have all the answers yet, but he had something more important, awareness and a willingness to change.
In the next part of this story, you will discover another hidden mistake.
One that feels comfortable, safe, even enjoyable, but slowly, it keeps people stuck in the same financial situation without them even noticing. And once you see it, you will never look at your daily habits the same way again. There is another mistake that feels comfortable. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't feel dangerous. In fact, it feels like a reward, something you deserve, something that helps you relax after a long day. And that is exactly why most people never question it. Min didn't question it either, not at first. After long hours at work, he always told himself the same thing. I deserve this, a good meal, a new item online, a small upgrade in his lifestyle. Nothing extreme, nothing irresponsible, just small improvements here and there. And each one felt justified because he worked hard, because he was tired, because life is short. But over time, something subtle started to happen. Min's standard of living slowly increased, not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, almost invisibly. He moved from basic meals to more expensive ones, from simple purchases to slightly better versions, from just enough to a little more, and each step felt normal because it happened gradually. That was mistake number 4, Lifestyle inflation. When your spending grows as fast as your income, or sometimes even faster, at first it feels like progress. You earn more, you spend more, you enjoy more. But if you look closely, nothing really changes. You are still in the same position, just at a higher level. One night, Min sat down again with his finances. But this time, he wasn't looking at his past. He was looking at his progress, or what he thought was progress. He compared his life now to a few years ago. Yes, he was earning more. Yes, he was living better. But when he asked himself a simple question, am I actually moving forward? The answer was unclear, because despite all the improvements, he still felt stuck. And that confused him, because he had been doing everything right, working harder, earning more, living better. So why did it feel like nothing had changed? That's when he started to notice something uncomfortable. Every time his income increased, his expenses increased too, automatically, without planning, without thinking. It was almost like his lifestyle was chasing his income, never letting him get ahead. Min remembered his first salary. Back then, he had less. But strangely, he also spent less. He adjusted. He survived. So why now, with more money, did he still feel the same pressure? That question stayed with him. And slowly, the answer became clear. It wasn't about how much he earned. It was about how much he kept. And more importantly, how much he allowed his lifestyle to grow. A few days later, Min had another conversation with Hoang. This time, he brought up his realization. I think every time I earn more, I just spend more. Hoang nodded. That's normal. Min looked surprised. Normal? Then why is it a problem? Hoang smiled slightly. Because if your lifestyle grows with your income, you will always feel like you need more. Min stayed quiet, because that sentence felt true, deeply true. Hoang continued, you don't become rich by earning more. You become rich by keeping the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That idea was simple, but powerful. And suddenly, Min saw everything differently. It wasn't about cutting all enjoyment. It wasn't about living a miserable life. It was about control. Control over how fast your lifestyle grows. Control over your desires. Control over what really matters. Min started to experiment, not with big changes, but with awareness again. The next time he received extra money, a bonus, a small raise, he didn't rush to upgrade his life. He paused and asked himself, do I really need to change anything? Sometimes the answer was yes, but often it was no. And that surprised him because he realized many of his upgrades in the past were not necessary. They were emotional. They were automatic. They were influenced by what he saw around him. Friends upgrading their phones, colleagues eating at better places, people on social media showing a more comfortable life. Without realizing it, Min had been following an invisible script, a script that said, as you earn more, you should spend more. But now, he began to question that script. And once again, his mindset started to change. He began to see money not as something to immediately enjoy, but as something to build with, something to grow, something to create freedom. That didn't mean he stopped enjoying life. He still ate good food. He still bought things he liked. But he did it with intention, not impulse, not pressure, not habit. And that made all the difference. Because now, every decision had a purpose. Mint also noticed something else. When he controlled his lifestyle, he felt lighter, less pressure, less stress. Because he was no longer trying to maintain an image. He was simply living within his own decisions, not someone else's expectations. And that gave him a new kind of confidence, a quiet one, the kind that doesn't need to be seen. Now, let me ask you something. When your income increases, what is the first thing you think about? Upgrading your life or improving your future? Do you feel pressure to level up your lifestyle? To match others around you? To show progress through what you own? Or are you comfortable staying the same while building something bigger behind the scenes? Because this is where the difference begins, not in how much you earn, but in how you respond to it. Min used to believe that earning more would solve everything, but now he understood that without control, more money simply creates more spending and more pressure and more dependence. But with control, more money creates options. freedom, possibility, and that is a completely different life. In the next part of this story, you will discover the final mistake, the one that connects everything together, the one that explains why some people stay stuck for years, even when they know what to do. And once you understand it, you will see why change is not just about knowledge, but about something much deeper. There is one final mistake, and this one is the most dangerous of all because it hides behind something that feels harmless, something most people say every day. Tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. I'll think about it later. I'll change when I have more time. Min used to say these things all the time, not because he was lazy, not because he didn't care, but because it felt easier. After long days at work, he told himself he deserved to rest. After stressful weeks, he told himself he would start next month. After learning something new, he told himself he needed more time to prepare. And slowly, without realizing it, he built a habit of delay. That was mistake number 5. Waiting, delaying, postponing change. At first, it feels safe because you are not making any risky decisions. You are not making mistakes. You are just waiting for the right time. But here's the truth Min discovered. The right time rarely comes, and even when it does, most people are not ready because they spent too much time waiting instead of preparing. One Sunday morning, Min woke up earlier than usual. There was no alarm, no work, no pressure, just silence. He sat by the window, holding a cup of coffee. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to think, not about work, not about money, but about his life, where he was, and where he was going. He asked himself a simple question. If nothing changes, where will I be in 5 years? He didn't answer immediately because deep down, he already knew. The same job, the same routine, the same financial situation, maybe slightly better, but not truly different. And that realization felt heavy, not because it was tragic, but because it was predictable. And suddenly, Min understood something powerful. His future was not uncertain. It was clear because his habits were clear. His decisions were clear. His patterns were clear. And if nothing changed, the result would not change either. That was the moment everything connected. All the mistakes he had discovered were not separate. They were linked, spending without awareness, saving without growth, working without direction, living without control, and waiting without action. Each one alone seemed small, but together, they created a life that never moved forward. Min didn't feel hopeless, but he felt something more important, responsible. Because now, he couldn't say he didn't know. He couldn't blame his situation on luck, or circumstances, or other people, because the truth was simple. His life was the result of his daily choices, and that meant he had the power to change it. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, consistently. He didn't make a big plan. He didn't try to fix everything at once. He just started, small, real, now. The next day, he did something different. Not something impressive, not something big, just one action he had been delaying. He opened a notebook and wrote down his financial situation clearly. Income, expenses, savings, no excuses, no guessing, just reality. Then he made one small decision to track his spending every day. Simple, but consistent. The day after that, he spent not 1 hour learning about money. Not everything. Just one idea, one concept, slowly, without pressure. Then he made another small decision to keep a part of his income untouched, not for spending, but for building something, even if he didn't know exactly what yet. And then he repeated, day after day, not perfectly, but consistently. Some days he felt motivated. Some days he didn't, but he kept going because he understood something now. Change is not about motivation, it's about direction. And small actions, done repeatedly, are more powerful than big plans that never start. Weeks passed. Then months. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden success. No big breakthrough. But something deeper changed. Min felt different, more aware, more intentional, more in control. And slowly, his situation began to change too. Not fast, but real. His savings started to grow. His spending became more conscious. His time was used better. And most importantly, he stopped waiting. He stopped telling himself, later, because he realized Later is where most dreams disappear. Now, let me ask you something. What have you been delaying? Not in a big way, but in a small, quiet way. Something you know you should do, but haven't started yet. Is it tracking your money? Learning a new skill? Changing a habit? Making a decision you've been avoiding? What is your tomorrow? Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. Not because it gets more difficult, but because it becomes your identity. I'm someone who delays. I'm someone who will do it later. And that identity shapes your entire life. Min was not special. He didn't have a perfect plan. He didn't have more time than others. He simply made a different choice to stop waiting, to start small, and to keep going. And that made all the difference. Now, this story is not really about Min. It's about you. Because somewhere in these mistakes, you might have seen yourself in the small spending, in the safe saving, in the endless working, in the growing lifestyle, in the waiting. And that's not a problem. Because awareness is where everything begins. But awareness alone is not enough. You have to act, even if it's small, even if it's imperfect, even if it's uncomfortable. Because your future is not built by what you know. It is built by what you do. So here's something simple. Not a big challenge, not a complicated plan. Just one small step. Today, before you sleep, take 5 minutes and ask yourself one question. What is one thing I can do today that my future self will thank me for? Then do it. No delay, no excuse, just action. And tomorrow, do it again. If this story made you think, if you saw a part of your life in it, then don't let it end here. Take the next step. Subscribe to this channel. Because this is where we don't just talk about English. We use English to understand life, to think deeper, to grow stronger, and to build a better future, one small step at a time. And if you know someone who is working hard but still feels stuck, share this video with them. Because sometimes one idea at the right time can change everything.